Alright, so we're going to be going over note 4 in CS70. This is the note on stable matching. And before I begin, let me just close all my drop downs so I don't give away the answers. Okay, so the stable matching problem. What is it? So essentially, what it aims to do is take a list of n candidates and a list of the same size, n jobs, and match them up based on how each candidate ranked each job and how each job ranked each candidate. And it aims to do this in the most favorable way possible. And we'll sort of refine our definition of favorable in a little bit. So the algorithm we use to perform this is called the propose and reject algorithm. And we're going to use this example, which I've illustrated in Paint. And just to give a high-level overview of what it is, each iteration we're going to call as one day, and each day is going to have 3 phases: a morning, afternoon, and the evening phase. So how this works is in the morning, and actually before I jump into it, I'm actually going to show the Paint version of this. So here we have jobs 1, 2, and 3, and to the right we have the order in which the job prefers the candidate. So A is greater than B is greater than C, and that's the case for, this row and this row, right? And we have a similar setup here, but now it's from the point of view of the candidates who are ranking the jobs. Okay. So to briefly go over the actual steps of the propose and reject algorithm, again, there's the 3 phases in the one-day iteration. So in the morning, the jobs propose to all of their top-ranked candidates. Okay. In the afternoon, all of the candidates technically say maybe. Any candidate that received an offer actually says maybe. And if a candidate received multiple offers, then they reject the one that they ranked lower. And in the final step, if a company received a rejection from a candidate, then they cross that candidate off and move on to the next candidate. And when the next day occurs, all companies maintain their offer to previous candidates unless a candidate rejected that job. And if that's the case, then the job just kind of sends a new offer to the next candidate. And I believe an example is probably the best way to illustrate this. I mean, we can see, in words what that looks like. And then let's illustrate in Paint. So we're going to say, I'm just going to erase some of that. Yeah. So first day, all the jobs are going to send offers to their top ranked candidates. So job 1 is going to send an offer to A. Job 2 is going to send an offer to B. And job 3 is going to send an offer to A. Okay, in the afternoon, each candidate is going to collect their offers and say maybe to the one that is ranked highest, or no if they received a second offer or more than one offer. Otherwise, a candidate is just not going to do anything. So we can see that in this case, A received an offer from job 1 and job 3. And by looking at candidate A's job ranking, we see that candidate 1 is ranked higher than candidate 3. So that means A is going to reject 3. Okay, and that sort of takes care of the evening step. And at this point, job 3 is going to cross off candidate A. Okay, and let me make sure this is all visible. Okay, great. Okay, for the next day, we are going to try to squeeze this in right here. This is going to be day 2. So the next day, all jobs make offers to their top candidates. So kind of like in the beginning, job 1 makes an offer to candidate A, job 2 maintains their offer to candidate B, and job 3 is now forced to make an offer to candidate B because it was rejected by A. So we're going to do that. And is this still on screen? Yeah, just barely. And now at this point, candidate B has 2 offers. And because it has multiple, it's going to choose the one with the higher ranking, which is 2, which means that B rejects 2. And because of that, job 3 is going to have to cross off B. And essentially, in the very end, we're going to see that on the 3rd day, job 3 is finally going to get to make a proposal to candidate C. And all other jobs maintained the offers to their candidates because all of those candidates maintained their acceptances from those jobs. And 3 will get an approval from candidate C because candidate C has not yet received any job offers. And in the system, any job offer is better than no job offer, kind of like in real life. So in day 3, the mapping that we'll end up with is job 1 gets candidate A, job 2 gets candidate B, and job 3 gets candidate C. So that's a very nice, very soft introduction to how this works. Discussion has a much better, more thorough problem that has you work through this, so I would definitely recommend being able to do that on your own. The next section, this is called the residency match. So I'm not really going to go into it because it's not extremely necessary to know, but essentially grad students kind of go to medical schools to get their what's called residency training. It's kind of like an internship, and I think it would be like their junior year of grad school where they would go, and essentially there was a ton of hospitals that wanted labor that was cheaper than hiring actual doctors. So there was a ton of these hospitals and not enough interns, and it was like a whole mess. But then some governmental organization stepped in and standardized the whole process, and basically, like, when it comes down to it, they used this algorithm, the propose and reject algorithm, to not necessarily solve but tackle this problem, the residency match problem. Okay, you definitely did not need to know that, but we're going to go on to the actual properties of the propose and reject algorithm. So there's 2 main ones, and we're just going to go over them. So the first one, which is lemma 4.1 in the notes, is that the algorithm always halts. Right, so this is fairly obvious. If it's the case that a job does not receive an offer from a candidate, or a candidate is not paired to a job, then it must be the case that the candidate has not yet received an offer, and so there's more jobs that will send offers to that candidate. Let's see. As long as there is still one company sending out offers, the algorithm does not halt. The next property we wish to show is stability, but we sort of need to understand a couple different definitions. So, what is a rogue couple? A rogue couple is when, say we have some job J that's paired with a candidate, and we have some candidate C that's paired with some other job. A rogue couple is when this job J would rather be with this candidate C, yet they are both with some other job or candidate. So it's a case where a job and candidate prefer to work with each other over their current matches, and this is considered unstable. So to boil it down, in order to have stability, we can't have any rogue couples because rogue couples are unstable. So yeah, that's when we're stable. And let's take a look at this. did I switch over? Yeah, I'm going to condense this a little bit. Okay. Consider the following match for the example above. Why is it unstable? So, I mean, they pretty much give us the answer in a hint. So, we're going to look at approximation Inc. and see that it's paired with Christine, but approximation Inc. would rather be with Bridget. And similarly, we're going to see that Bridget is paired with Basis Co., but Bridget would rather be with approximation Inc. Since Bridget ranks approximation Inc. higher than Basis Co., and approximation Inc. ranks Bridget higher than Christine, then a rogue couple is, among us, I guess. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Do stable matchings always exist? The answer is not necessarily. Let's see. Well, so it sort of depends on what type of data you're using. In the case that we're going to see, which I'll talk about later, if the data comes in two types of categories, for example, a job and a candidate, then that helps to ensure that there is some sort of stable matching. But in this example right here, if we have like a single category and we try to match up members of that one category to other members of that same category, then as we can see through this example, there's a whole bunch, it causes a whole bunch of rogue couples. So this is roommates. Roommate A ranks the other three, B ranks the other three, D doesn't even rank anyone. But we're gonna see, just by this description here, that if we were to pair A and B and C and D, then it turns out that B and C is a rogue couple. And why is that? Well, because A is paired with B, which is okay, and C is paired with D, but B would rather be with C, and C would rather be with B over D. So, that's just one of the rogue couples that comes out of a certain matching of these. So, hopefully that's on screen. Yeah. And sort of the important part that I talked about, it's going to rely on the fact that there's two categories, and yeah, given that fact, we're going to prove that there will always be a stable match. So, some analysis. So, I didn't really close all of these, but it's okay. So, observation 4.1. Over time, jobs get worse candidates, and let me zoom out a slight bit. Let me see that. Come on. Okay. So over time, jobs get worse candidates and candidates get equal or better jobs. So if we think about how this works, the jobs make proposals to their highest ranked candidates at the very start, right? And the candidates can choose to either accept that or reject that, right? Depending on how many offers they get. Now, because the jobs propose to the top ranked candidates, if they ever get rejected from their top ranked candidates, then they will be forced to propose to candidates that are worse than their top ranked candidates. However, as more jobs make more proposals to the candidates will be faced with more options that will either be equal to or higher in ranking than the initial job offers that the candidates got. Okay? And here is something that's been brought up a couple times, at least in discussion it was brought up, and in the actual problems we did, and it's called the improvement lemma. And it essentially says that if a job J makes an offer to a candidate C on some K day, then every day onwards, C must receive some job offer that she likes as much or more. So essentially, once a candidate receives a job offer, they have some sort of job. And as time progresses, they won't lose that job. They'll at least have that job. And if some job that is ranked higher for that candidate makes an offer to that candidate, then they will accept it. But, if it's lower, then they simply won't accept it. So that's how the job will only stay as good as the current job or improve. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And something else that they briefly snuck in here was the well ordering principle. And basically it says that if there is an ordering to a set of numbers, then there is a smallest set of numbers. I guess if the set has to be natural numbers and it can't be empty. But I mean, that's fairly obvious. There's also a couple sets that don't satisfy the well ordering principle. Some of them are negative numbers, some of them are real numbers, negative integers. This is because they have no smallest value, right? You know, if you think of negative integers. Okay, and now we're going to take a look at lemma 4.3, which says the propose and reject algorithm always terminates. Right, and so this goes back to the very first thing we talked about, which is that there are n number of jobs and n number of candidates. If it's ever the case that some candidate does not have a job, then it must be the case, or, sorry, give me 1 second, I need to, okay, so we were on lemma 4.3, so the propose and reject algorithm always terminates. Okay, yeah, so as we said, there's n jobs and n candidates. If a job has made a proposal to every candidate, then that means that, you know, n proposals have been made. And we're saying that the propose and reject algorithm always terminates, but what if we assume that it doesn't? If it's the case that a job has made a proposal to all the candidates, but a candidate has still not accepted the offer from the job, then it must be the case that there is still some candidate out there that the job must make a proposal to. And we know that that can't be the case because if n jobs made n proposals, then n candidates must have been proposed to at least once. And there must be an equal number of jobs to candidates. So by contradiction, we find that the algorithm must always terminate. So let's see. The matching produced by the algorithm is always stable. Okay. So we're again going to do a sort of contradiction. So we're going to do this from the point of view of the job, right? So let's say there's some job J that prefers to be with some job, and we'll call it C star. Okay, if that's the case, then J, let's see. Let's say J is paired with some candidate C, right? But it would prefer to be with the candidate C star. Now, that means that J must have made a proposal to C star before it made a proposal to C, because jobs are the ones that make the proposals, so naturally they go in order from their highest ranked candidate to the lowest ranked candidate. Now, if it's the case that C star said no to J, then it must be the case that C star likes some other job as much or greater than J. And because C star does not reciprocate that love that J has for C star, there is no rogue couple. It is not the case that both a job and a candidate want each other over their current matchings. It's only the case that that one job wants that one candidate over its current matching. So that means that the match must be stable by this algorithm. And here is it written out a bit more. I'll zoom back in. Okay. So now we're going to move on to optimality. And, you know, what does it mean to be optimal? Well, we can take the point of view of two sides. We can say we can make the algorithm optimal. We can make the algorithm optimal for jobs in the sense that the optimal candidate is picked for every job. And essentially how that works is that once we've ran the algorithm, it's possible that there's multiple stable matches between them. And if we want an optimal candidate for a job, then we'd simply pick the stable match that has, for each job, the highest ranked candidate that it could possibly have in order for it to be a stable match. And this is essentially the opposite of it. We pick the stable match that has the highest ranked job for, you know, each candidate. And, you know, there's also the decimal for a candidate, and same for a job. And I mean, this question depends on whose side you're on, right? And this theorem, I actually sort of had trouble wrapping my head around it. I would appreciate if someone were able to, you know, give a little feedback onto my thought process. But this one intuitively makes sense, where it says that the matching output by the propose and reject algorithm is job employer optimal, because, you know, jobs are the ones that get their first pick right off the bat. But yeah, I'm not really going to go into this one. Let's see. I think I had a picture for this. I don't know where it went. But so if the algorithm is employer, this one says, if the algorithm is employer optimal, then it is candidate decimal. So I will try to draw this one out right now. And we're going to switch over to Paint again. Okay, so let's see, how should we do this? So the first thing we're going to do is define some job J and some candidate C. And we're going to say that we're kind of going to contradict what the theorem is saying, because the theorem says that, you know, if the algorithm is employer optimal, then it must be candidate decimal. And we're going to contradict it in the sense that we're going to say this matching right here is both job optimal and it's candidate optimal. Okay, and then we're going to create this set right here that is actually, let's see, that is actually a stable match. And this is going to be J star, wants to be with C. Okay, so is everything, yeah. So this is a stable match of some sort, right? So if it's the case that this pair right here is the job optimal and candidate optimal, then that means, like, if this was the pair that we wanted to create, because we assume that the algorithm is both job optimal and candidate optimal, this would mean that J would actually prefer to be with C, and C would actually prefer to be with J. But having run the algorithm on these pairs, we find out that that's not the case. And so it must be the case that this is a rogue couple, and so therefore it cannot be true that the algorithm is both job optimal and candidate optimal. It must be job optimal and candidate decimal. And I feel like I didn't exactly really prove that, unfortunately, but please ask questions below in the comments if you have any. Hopefully I'll get back to you. I don't know if people will actually be looking at these, but yeah. Okay, so that was really just my kind of high-ish level overview of Node 4, which is the stable matching note in CS70.